Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DISB Insurance Intelligence Podcast, an official podcast of the DC Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking. I'm Chief Communications Officer Art Swift, and I'm here with Associate Commissioner for Insurance Phillip Barlow. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you, Art. It's good to be here.
Today, we're going to talk about life insurance, why you should consider having it, and how to obtain it. But first, I'd like to ask you, Phil, to tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do for DISB?
So I'm the Associate Commissioner for Insurance, as you mentioned, which means I oversee all of the traditional insurance functions in the department, which includes things like licensing the companies and the people who sell insurance, approving the rates and forms for plans sold here, monitoring the companies for financial solvency, and things like that.
Very good. Very good. Well, I'm glad you're here. What is life insurance and why should people consider getting it?
So life insurance is insurance that pays upon the death of a person. So maybe it should be called death insurance, but that has a downer sense to it. But life insurance is really intended to address the financial impact of the death of the insured. So there are several reasons why people may purchase life insurance. A big one would be if there are family members who are supporting the family through their earnings, then you might want to have insurance in case one or more of those people dies, so that you can continue to have a lifestyle approaching what you had when you had the person there. You could also, life insurance is also important to help address end-of-life expenses. There may be funeral costs and things like that you want to cover, and insurance is a good way to take care of those things. And for some people, insurance is a very important tool, generally speaking, for estate planning purposes, to help after they die, to make sure there is appropriate resources to manage the transfer of their estate to their heirs.
Makes sense. Appreciate that explanation. Tell me then, what is term insurance?
So term insurance is one of the types of life insurance. It, as the name implies, term insurance provides insurance for a specific term. So typically what you will see these days are term insurance policies may be a 10-year level term, 20-year level term, 30-year level term, which would mean that they provide insurance coverage for that period of time with a level premium over that period. But with term insurance, there is no buildup of cash value. If you stop the coverage, you get nothing back from the policy. It's very good for certain needs. Term insurance tends to be the cheapest alternative for purchasing life insurance. So if that fits your needs, then that's a good way to do it. Typically, when the term ends for the policy, you can renew the policy, but the costs for renewing a term policy tend to be very expensive. So you should not really consider an extension of the term policy beyond the initial term.
Is that activated as well upon a person's death?
Term insurance pays upon the death of the insured person. Interesting.
Okay, so it's so one is just a different, more limited variation of the other. That is interesting and also good to know. If people have questions about their insurance, where can they find answers?
So that really depends on what type of questions that you have. In my experience, a good life insurance agent will be able to provide you a lot of information to help you decide what kind of insurance you might need, options for getting that insurance, how best to pay for it, and things like that. So, they can help you look at your life circumstances and help you determine based on what of the previous kind of risks that I described you may have, how much insurance you want. So again, if you're trying to figure out if you have questions about getting insurance, that's a great place to look. And if you don't have a life insurance agent, talking to friends, family members, to find out who they might have used to get insurance, and if that person is good, is a good way to do that. You can always check with us at the Department of Insurance to find out if the person is appropriately licensed to sell insurance in the District of Columbia, because as I mentioned earlier, that's one of the things that we do. If you're looking for, if you have insurance and you have a question about it, or general questions, talking to your insurance company is good. You can also reach out to us at the Department of Insurance, and we certainly have resources. We have resources on our website, but we also have staff who can help answer any questions you have about insurance.
And if you're in another state, you could find the link to your state insurance department's website at naic.org, and you can then go through that. Good. So once I have a policy, am I done?
Well, like with many things, once you have a policy, you probably should continue to monitor the policy to make sure that it's still appropriate for your circumstances, and continues to meet your needs. So many things could happen. For example, you may find out that as time goes on, you need more or less insurance. Family circumstances change. You get married, you have children, you buy a home. All of these things can affect the amount of insurance that you or whoever the insured person is may want to have. And so it's important to continue to monitor those kind of things and make sure that you keep on top of it and see that your policy still meets your needs. There are also a lot of ancillary benefits that can be available in your insurance policy, and it's important to understand what those are, so that if there's if circumstances arise and you can exercise some of those benefits, then you may want to do that as well. It's not, you shouldn't just buy a life insurance policy and stick it in a drawer and forget it.
Well, that is good to know then. Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about beneficiaries on a life insurance policy?
Sure. Beneficiaries are the people who will get the proceeds from the insurance policy after the death of the insured person. So that's a very important part of the policy, and it's something that needs careful consideration. It may seem obvious who you want to have as your beneficiary, but even the way you identify the beneficiary may be take some thought. So, for example, you could say, I want John T. Smith to be my beneficiary, if that's your spouse, but maybe as you go along, you wind up at some future time with a different spouse, and you may want that person to be your beneficiary. But if you still have John T. Smith listed as your beneficiary, then they would remain the beneficiary. So, if you wanted to name, for example, your children as your beneficiary, if you identified children by name, then that works well, unless you have additional children or something like that. So, it's a key part of it. You generally can name both a primary beneficiary and contingent beneficiaries. So the primary beneficiary would be the first person or people. It doesn't have to be one person to get the proceeds. And then should that person predecease the insured, then the contingent beneficiaries would come into play. So just like everything else with life insurance, it can be a little bit technical to make sure you get it right. But again, a good life insurance agent can help you address all of those questions as you are setting up your insurance policy.
Okay, so let's go through this kind of rapidly. I'm curious about naming beneficiaries. Like, let's start with your spouse. How would you go about that?
Well, again, I think you can either name the person individually, specifically by name. You can say, I want my beneficiary to be my spouse. There are various ways. There are various ways that you can do it. Spouse is a pretty straightforward one. But you would very likely want to name the person specifically. But again, if you did that, you would need to monitor it. Should you change spouses or no longer have a spouse?
That's right.
You want to make sure that you have that you have an appropriate beneficiary for your policy.
And what if you wanted to name your children?
So again, it gets kind of technical on some of these things. As I said earlier, you could say, I want my beneficiaries to be my children. It really would be helpful if you kind of identified your children specifically and identified the portion of the benefit that should go to each beneficiary, whether it's a child or anybody else. It's also important to understand, again, what happens if should one of your beneficiaries, again, predecease the insured, then how you identify your beneficiary can impact whether the benefits pass on to their heirs or go to the other beneficiaries. So,
now what about this scenario? What if you wanted to name minor children, those under 18, to be a beneficiary? Can you even do that?
So typically insurance companies do not like to pay benefits to minor children. So usually if the beneficiary is a minor child, then most likely it would be set up with a trust or something like that in the name of the minor child until that child reaches an appropriate age. So
that makes sense. Yes, absolutely. And it sounds like, I think I know the answer to this, you could change your beneficiaries at any time, right?
Well, the owner of the insurance policy can change the beneficiary. So when you say it depends on what your role is in the policy. The owner of the policy is typically the person who initiates the purchase of the policy. Many times they are the person who is paying the premiums for the policy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. But there will be an owner identified on the policy, and that person really controls the ability to make changes to the policy, including the naming of beneficiaries. So,
excellent. That's very valuable information. You are providing us with a great service this podcast, and I want to just mention that this is the DISB Insurance Intelligence Podcast. I am Art Swift, your host, and I am joined by Phillip Barlow, Associate Commissioner for Insurance at the Department of Insurance, Securities, and Banking. Let's just say a year from now, I may not recall which company I have life insurance through. how do I locate the company that services my life insurance policy?
Well, I would say if you've forgotten your insurance company within a year, that's on you. But one of the things about life insurance policies is that they can last a really long time, and there are a lot of changes in the insurance industry that happen. So, for me, for example, my life insurance policy, the company changed names, and then they were acquired by a different company, and so they changed names yet again. It can be confusing to find information about the insurance company that has your policy, or maybe even a policy on a relative that you find information that they had a policy, or even think they had a policy. And there are ways. So there are certainly ways to find out about life insurance policies if you are having trouble tracking down whether there was a policy and who currently is managing that policy. One thing you can do is, the best thing to do is find any information you can that identifies there is a life insurance policy. So, it could be the policy itself, which might have the name of the company when the policy was originally issued. You might find a premium payment, who did you make the check out to, or who was the check made out to? Anything that you can find that identifies a company. Then once you have a company name, I would say the best thing to do is contact your local state insurance department and provide them with that information, and they can help you track down what happened to that company. If the company still exists, they can point you to where that company is. If the company has changed, has been acquired, or merged with another company or something like that, they can help you track that down too, so you can find the company that currently controls the insurance policy. If you think that a relative, for example, tells you, I've got an insurance policy, so don't you worry about it, and you can't find any record of that at all, there's still something you can do to try to track down if there was a life insurance policy in force on that person. And for that you can go to our website, and we have a place on our website where you can put in some information about the person. You would have to know their date of death. You have to know their social security number, I believe, and some other information. And you can fill in some information, and a search will be done of all of most of the life insurance companies operating in the United States, and they will all search their records to determine if they had a policy on that individual, and if so, they would let you know. So that's a service that all state insurance or departments provide. So if you're not in the district, you can go to where your local state insurance department and find that information as well.
And Philip mentioned our website, which again is disb.dc.gov, or you can always call us at 202-727-8000. One thing I've been curious about are there instances where after someone passes on, insurance companies are reluctant or just refuse to pay benefits? Does that happen?
Well, so, that's something that happens more on TV than in real life, I think. But there are circumstances where a life insurance policy would not be paid. If, for example, the insured commits suicide, generally within 2 years of purchasing a policy, then the benefit would not be paid. The premiums would be refunded in that case. But that's to help eliminate the incentive for people to buy insurance.
Yeah.
So there's a public policy purpose for that. Another reason why an insurance company might pause on paying a claim is if there is if they identified that there is fraud in the application for the policy and the policy was issued relatively recently, then they might have an objection to paying a claim. And other things might affect the amount of the claim. For example, if the age of the insured was reported wrong on the initial policy and they find out that they might adjust the benefits to what they would be for the actual age of the person, things like that. And again, these things happen very rarely. But if anybody has an issue with a claim, a life insurance claim being paid, the best thing to do is to reach out to your state insurance department, because all state insurance departments, just like our department, have staff that are specifically focused on helping consumers address issues that they may have with their insurance company. So, and that's the kind of thing that we can help if there is an issue with getting a claim paid.
Absolutely. And I think you've touched upon it before, but just to wind up here, life insurance is very beneficial for funeral expenses, correct?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, it's a good way to plan for a funeral. One of the things about using insurance to cover some of those costs is if you have your life insurance policy, if your beneficiary is an individual rather than, for example, your estate, the proceeds from the life insurance policy would fall outside of any probate issues after your death. So the money could be readily available, so not only does it help cash flow wise, but if you may have plenty of money in your estate to take care of those expenses, but it could wind up getting caught up in resolving your estate before they could be made available. So life insurance is a good way to address that, as long as you again design the policy right, designate the beneficiary properly. You can do that, and not only will it come without the probate issues, but it also would be tax-free to the beneficiary. So that's a helpful benefit.
Excellent reasons right there. I appreciate that. Well, I'd like to thank you, Phillip Barlow, today for joining us, and I appreciate your time and all the great information you've shared.
Sure.
Thank you very much. And I also should mention in closing, the information on this podcast is for general information purposes only. Nothing in this podcast should be taken as legal advice for any individual case or situation. You should consult an attorney, a broker, your agent, or insurer for questions about your coverage or for professional advice. This concludes our DISB podcast on life insurance. For more information about the department's services and resources, visit disb.dc.gov or call 202-727-8000. Again, that's disb.dc.gov or call 202-727-8000. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Thanks for joining us, and be well.